Here are the solutions for the Chapter 8 review. We have some questions out of the book and then some additional questions that were shown on the screen and are in Plan Book. So on page 335, be careful you're doing the section called Chapter Review, not the section called Chapter Test. They're very similar. Question 1, we're asked for the distance between these points. So you use the distance formula. The change in the x values squared plus the change in the y values squared. Look at the x values. It changes from 3 to 10. That's 7 units. Look at the y values. It's changing from 9 to negative 15. That's 9 plus 15 units, which is 24 units. Then take a calculator and type in this entire expression. The result is 25. Number 2, for these ordered pairs, find the midpoint. So the formula is to add the x's together and divide by 2, and add the y's together and divide by 2. Negative 7 and negative 2 makes negative 9 over 2. And then for the y's, negative 3 and negative 3 makes negative 6 over 2. Now we can reduce. This is negative 9 halves, or negative 4 1/2 as a mixed number, comma, negative 3. Number 3, we're given that the slope of line L is 0.5. As a fraction, that's 1/2, if that helps you make reciprocals. And now we want the slope of a perpendicular. So we're going to do the negative reciprocal. A positive number turns to negative, and then you flip it upside down, getting negative 2. Question 4, write the equation of a circle with this center in this radius. So the general form is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. This is h, this is k. So we have x minus 0, but that's just x squared. We have y minus 0, that's just y squared. And now we want to square the value of r. So be really careful with that. You're taking the number for r and squaring it. You've got to square both parts of this. 2 squared makes 4, and square root of 3 squared makes 3, and 4 times 3 is 12. So here's the equation. Next one, we want to graph this. It's got x as a linear and y is squared. So this makes a parabola. Let's rearrange the right side so the terms are in the correct order. Negative y squared, then the plus 2y, then the plus 4. We know some things about the parabola. Because the letter x is alone, and it has a negative leading coefficient on y squared, the parabola is opening sideways like this. Furthermore, because it's an inequality, and there's that little or equal to line, it will be a solid boundary. And because it's a is less than symbol, we're going to shade inside the parabola. So all things we know before we even get started. This is standard form, so let's use the technique that involves A, B, and C and get the y value of the vertex point using negative b divided by 2a. So this is negative 2 divided by negative 2, which makes 1. Now make an xy table. And in the middle row of the table, y is 1. Substitute that in to figure out x. So 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 minus 1 makes 5. Smaller than 1, which would be 0, and then negative 1, and go higher than 1, which would be 2, and then 3. Let's substitute in 0. The result is 4, and this will be 4. Now let's substitute in negative 1. So 4 minus 2 makes 2, minus 1 makes 1. Now we can graph. First, let's set up our axes. On the x-axis, we got to get to positive 5. On the y-axis, we need negative 1, and we need to get up to positive 3. Now we can make dots. 1, negative 1, 4, 0, 5, 1, 4, 2, and 1, 3. We had already decided earlier it would be a solid boundary. And we had decided earlier that we would shade inside that parabola. Number 6, we want to graph this equation. It has the letter y alone in terms of x. We could leave it in this form and make an xy table. We would just need to make sure that we use lots of different numbers for x, negative numbers, positive numbers, and so on, so that we get all of the equation. The other thing we can do is we can rearrange this a little bit to see if we recognize the format. Let's remove the radical by raising both sides to the second power. On the left side, we have y squared. On the right side, -2 squared makes 4, and then when you square the radical, it cancels away, leaving the radicand. Now distribute the 4. 4 times 4 is 16, and 4 times -x squared is -4x squared. Now it's a little bit easier to recognize the shape that we have. We have x squared and y squared, so it's either a circle, ellipse, or hyperbola. Let's put the x squared and y squared terms on the same side by adding 4x squared. We have 4x squared plus y squared is equal to 16. Now I see that there's adding in between there, so I'm thinking circle or ellipse. For an ellipse, it's equal to 1. So let's divide everything by 16. We get x squared over 4 plus y squared over 16 is equal to 1. Now I know for sure that it's an ellipse. The value of b is 2, and the value of a is 4 by doing square roots of those denominators. Now let's make our graph. On the x-axis, we had b equals 2. So 2 to the left, 2 to the right from the center. On the y-axis, we had a equals 4. So 4 up and 4 down from the center. Then draw in the ellipse. Number 7. This time we have x squared and y squared, and it's got a minus sign. So I'm thinking hyperbola. But for a hyperbola, the equation should say equals 1. So let's divide everything by 4. We have x squared over 4 minus y squared is equal to 1. If it helps, put a 1 under the denominator. Now we can see that a is 2 and b is 1. Let's make a grid. On the x-axis, we had a is 2. So 2 to the left, 2 to the right. On the y-axis, b is 1. Up 1, down 1. We need to draw a rectangular box through those spots. And then draw the diagonals of that rectangular box. Now we can draw in our hyperbola. Because the x squared comes first, it is the sideways opening hyperbola. It will touch right here and go along the asymptote lines. And it will touch right here on the edge of that box and go along the asymptote lines. That's all for the book. There were some extra questions that were just shown on the screen. Find the distance. So use the distance formula. Change in x squared plus change in y squared. X is changing from 2 to 6. That's an increase of 4 units. Y changes from 5 to -9. So it's decreasing 5 plus 9, or -14 units. Then type this entire thing in the calculator. And rounding off, the answer is 14.5. Number 2, use the same ordered pairs but find the midpoint. So the formula is to average the x's and average the y's. 2 plus 6 makes 8, and 8 divided by 2 makes 4. And 5 plus negative 9 makes negative 4, and negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Next, we want a graph, but we have to know what shape we have. This is the format for a circle. This number right here, which is subtracted from x, is the value of h. There is no number subtracted from y, so k is 0. That's our center. It is at 1, 0. That number there is radius squared, so the radius is 3. Let's make a grid. Start by locating the center. It is at 1, 0. And then go 3 units in all directions from the center. To the right, down, and to the left. Then draw in a circle. Number 4, this time we're given the center in radius and we're asked for the equation of a circle. This is the value of h and this is k. So the general form is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals radius squared. Make the substitutions. X minus negative 1 makes x plus 1. Then y minus 4, and then 25. Number 5, we're asked to graph, so we need to know what shape it is. X squared and y squared with a plus sign equals 1. This is an ellipse. In an ellipse, A is always larger than B. Here's the larger denominator, so A is 3 and B is 2. Now let's make a grid. The A equals 3 is with the x term, so it's on the x-axis that you go 3 units and mark. The B equals 2 is with the y this time, so on the y-axis go up 2 and down 2. Then draw an ellipse through those dots. Number 6, what shape is this one when it's got the minus sign? This is a hyperbola. It's already in the standard form. It's already got the x squared and the y squared where they're supposed to be. It already got equal to 1. So A equals 3 and B equals 2. Make a grid. On the x-axis, go out 3. On the y-axis, go out 2. Now draw a rectangular box. And draw the diagonals of that box. Now we're going to draw a hyperbola, but we need to know where to put it. When x squared comes before the subtraction, that's the side-by-side hyperbola. So it touches right on the edge of the box and comes down along the asymptote and along that asymptote. Over here it touches right at the edge of the box and alongside there and alongside there. Number 7, take this equation, which is in standard form for a parabola, and change it to vertex form. Vertex form is y equals some number times x minus h squared plus some number. This is an actual number, this will be a number, and on the end it will be some number. To do this, let's first rewrite it just a little bit so there's a blank spot after the x term and the plus 3's just moved over a little. Now we're going to figure out what number to put in the blank spot. And there's a technique for that we've used a lot of times. It involves looking at the -5, doing something to the -5. You take half of it, which makes this fraction, and then you square it. So in the blank spot, you add 25 over 4. And on the other side of that plus 3, you're going to write minus 25 over 4. That compensates, so you're not changing the original question at all. Next step, take the trinomial part that you just created and write it using parentheses. It's x minus 5 halves squared. And then here on the end, you just need to figure out what this number is right here. On a calculator, 3 minus 25/4 is negative 13. So here is our vertex form.